Welcome back into the Mavs Pulse Podcast. Anthony Davis will be traded. Where, when, and why? We'll break that down here. My name is Blake Elliott, joined by Grant Afseth, the best in the biz, covering the team, as well as Derrick Lively, who will be out for the season, what this means for this team's future and the trade assets around him. How's Cooper Flagg looked? The rookie of the year. He's bounced back, and we are sorry for the extended period of time we missed. Busy life, which means we're back here, and we won't leave you guys again. You got my promise. Granty, have you been the last 2 weeks, man? We took some time off, and the Mavericks have just been winning.
Yeah, they definitely have given us a lot to talk about. A lot of things have emerged as well. Ryan Nembhard's been a really good story. There's, that as the game you mentioned in Oklahoma City, that was a tough one, but 4 out of the last 5 games they managed to win. That Lakers game really was kind of a inflection point for them, where some of those key changes that we're going to get into occurred. They lost the game, but were a beginning for kind of what we're seeing now. So it's been cool to follow this along, and there's a lot of things that need to play out for this Mavericks team. As you mentioned, Anthony Davis's future is key. Kyrie Irving still has yet to play. Derrick Lively is out for the season. So there's a lot to get into, and definitely glad to be talking about it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back here with you as well. Shams Charania has been going crazy when it comes to Anthony Davis getting traded. There's a new story coming out every day about him. So that's been a fun point to follow, because we got the talks about him maybe getting extended from Klutch. We figured out that Klutch and Rich Paul have talked to the organization, or at least talked to Shams. We've got the report that Klutch wants clarity on Anthony Davis' future, whether that's going to be with the Mavericks in the form of an extension, or whether that's in the form of being traded in the middle of the season this year. I think a lot of fans are kind of looking for him to be traded.
Yeah, that's a classic extend me or trade me situation is what that's sounds like it's been trending towards, from, just talking to people who are, very knowledgeable about, just how these situations play out, and this situation in particular. Like, that's usually the playbook that Klutch tends to go. And, they've dealt with quite a few situations as well where they have a star player. They need to go find money for them before they get traded. And, right now there's a couple of teams that have been put out, from Shams in his reporting, building on those points that you had mentioned about Klutch, between Eastern Conference teams like the Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, Toronto Raptors. One of the, obviously not a perfect player for player comparison, but recently Klutch had to find a situation for a max player like Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans being traded to the Raptors. So there's a little bit of a history there between Toronto and Klutch being able to find a player money when otherwise maybe they wouldn't have found that on the market had they hit free agency or not gotten that deal done. So just some things to think about when, really evaluating Anthony Davis's market as we get closer to that February 5th deadline.
My question for you is, are you a little surprised that Chicago was not on there? Because they were the first trade rumor we heard about. Kobe White, Vucevic, some picks thrown in there, expirings. And are you surprised that Detroit is in there with them being the number 1 team in the East? Them boys are killing it. Cade Cunningham looks like an MVP candidate. Durant looks great. And some of the pieces in there were like Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, and some picks. I think one thing we need to realize, Mavs fans listening, is that you are not going to get the Luka-like return for Anthony Davis. I think that's been made very clear from watching with our own eyeballs of who Anthony Davis is, and from some of the reporting coming out from GMs and scouts and analysts and whatnot. You're going to get role players. You're going to get maybe a secondary star. When you kind of seen some Zach LaVine thrown around there, the Kobe White. It's like a guy that's like, okay, yeah, he's cool. Max Christie-esque level, maybe even a little better. But you're not getting, a top 20 player in the NBA.
Yeah, it'll be like that Kevin Durant type of return, where you get like a young player perhaps that's not on the best contract. Like the Suns got Jalen Green. There's not a lot of fans of that contract around the NBA. You look at like some of these teams, like whether it's just filler, like a Kristaps Porzingis contract, or it's a RJ Barrett contract. Those are not necessarily like big draws by any means. Those are just players to get a deal done. I think RJ Barrett's having a good season, of course, but that's not necessarily, as you said, a top 20 player or even close to it. So not the return that you basically gave up to get Anthony Davis. And if you're moving him at this point, you understand that nobody in the NBA values Anthony Davis as much as Nico Harrison. That's why he is no longer in the NBA, we could say.
It's tough. And it's just a dead asset. It's just sitting on you. You can't go, hey, we agree with all, like the Mavs can't go, hey, we agree with all you guys, and we know he's not that good. We're just going to, we want the same return. They're like, no, it is what it is. He's not very, let me be clear. He is a very good basketball player. He is not as good as the trade that you got for him and being Luka and whatnot.
Yeah, a perennial MVP candidate is the highest bar you could possibly, in their prime as well, and that you could possibly get. So you're basically selling, you're buying as high as possible, and you are also in the process of selling a bit low because he hasn't really had like a full 30 consecutive games or 25 out of 30 games that he's played.
He's just a monster.
Yeah, because even in a Mavericks uniform, you take the play-in out of it because he had a big game in Memphis. So I'm not trying to discredit that, but when you look up the stats, usually those are not included. He's averaged just under 20 points per game in a Mavericks uniform in regular season action. Like, you need your stars to be the floor raisers for your team. He just, because of injuries, has unfortunately been unable to provide that consistent presence throughout his time here. So that's part of the value that gets baked in, because you need, with how much money goes into the star players, they have to bring it on a daily basis. And unfortunately, since February, he's just been unable to do that due to injuries.
Two things that I want to clear up. I want to clear up the money that could be owed to Anthony Davis with an extension and what that timeline looks like, and kind of why that matters for trying to trade Anthony Davis and when you do it. And then also, are you of the belief that the Mavericks will trade Anthony Davis? Maybe those two, maybe the first one answers the second one.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we still have to resolve some elements of this overall situation before we know. For example, if the trade returns are really underwhelming, I don't think they're going to be compelled to move him just to move him at the deadline. Then you go into the situation into the summer where, you're going to have those contract conversations. They're probably already a little bit having those preliminary talks of a feel out, if you will. So both sides have some due diligence, but he's eligible for a contract extension, I believe August 6th, and he could earn upwards to $76 million at age 37. So if he's compelled to seek a max extension for the full amount of years, that would be the amount of money you'd be paying him at 37 years old. And for all the things we just discussed with the injuries, that is why the potential trade returns would not be as strong as you would probably like. And you also have to kind of go into the pros and cons, if you will, like putting your GM hat on. You have to risk player health anytime you wait longer to do a trade. Like if you are in a position where Anthony Davis gets injured again, as unfortunate as that may be, like at any
even
time,
worse.
Yes, then you have to table this, if most likely, like just all together, and then you're put in a position where you're dealing with this in the summer, and that's really the obvious risk averse element of this, where you don't want to risk that, of course. But the other side of it is the value of the actual trade return. You're going to get your best offers, most likely, barring injury, of course, close to the trade deadline as possible, because the urgency to get a deal done where buyers get antsy and they're like, all right, we just got to push our chips in, get this done. We can make a run. That happens as close as you get to the deadline as possible. And if you don't get those types of offers, then you're probably wanting to take this into the summer. And then that's where you kind of open Pandora's box a bit, because if Kyrie Irving's going to come back and play at a high level, as many expect him to do, then you might actually really like what you see as well. Like, you might really like the thought of Cooper Flag developing with a full NBA offseason going into next season, where you have that 1 year window that we've all kind of thought, if we kept going on the Nico Harrison plan, they could at least have, with Kyrie not having to deal with an ACL recovery, and then being able to kind of reconfigure this team where needed around the margins to then go into that 2027 year where you can really compete. But again, with all of the things that we've discussed many times, that's a big risk to put so much pressure on 1 year while you're trying to build around someone so young like Cooper Flagg. You don't want to put it all on Black and then lose the trade value as well over time of these guys that you could be moving to then build around Cooper Flagg better. So it's really just about your appetite for risk, what the ownership group necessarily views about all this stuff. And it's even more complicated because we're not discussing a team that has a full-time GM right now either. So all of these things make this a complicated situation.
I want to get into two things right there. You got my mind running with those. First thing is, who do we think, this is kind of us speculating. I mean, you're very plugged in, so if you have the answer, please let me know. This is us speculating. Who do we think is calling the shots? Because you got Matt Riccardi and Finley as the interim co-GM. So cool. They're kind of when they do reporting on ESPN, they're gonna mention them. That's kind of the front-facing people. But I think all of us listening can kind of agree those probably are the people calling the top shots. There's three other people. There's Patrick Dumont. There is Jason Kidd. And there is Mark Cuban. We know all of them have a seat at the big table. We do know that. Now, we know Dumont has the final say-so, the hit the gavel, cool, so we don't have to spend much time on that, but we know he's not that involved in the basketball operations, a.k.a. why he's kind of hired a Nico, brought in a Cuban. Who do we think, if Anthony Davis, let's just say hypothetically, gets moved at this trade deadline here in February, who do we think is going to be the one to call that shot and send it to Dumont? Because I think the power structure is a little bit fuzzy. And my guess is I think Jason Kidd is kind of the acting GM right now, just from kind of reading through reports and talking to you. I just have a feeling that Jason Kidd has a lot more power than we believe. And I feel like if he wants AD off the team, he can have a heavy push on this, more even than your interim co-GMs.
Yeah, I think the situation overall is very fuzzy and fluid for the power structure. I think in general, as you said, with Jason Kidd, he's the one directly coaching the team, but also you have to have his vision on the court be aligned with the actual roster construction. So I think by default, he is going to have a ton of influence.
Because do you want the guy, the co-GMs that may not be here next year? I mean, all love to them. I know them both personally, great guys. But let's just say they're not here next year. It says they're going to stay for the rest of the season, and then they'll be a candidate for next year. Let's just say they're both not here next year. Do you want those two people making a decision on one of the biggest decisions of your future? Obviously, you already made one crazy one with trading Luka, but this is like the aftermath of how do you recover from it, and does your franchise go down or up? It's a huge decision to make on what you get, when you do it, yada, yada, yada. Do you want people making decisions that may not be here long term? So.
No, yeah, for all of what you just said, that's exactly why I think Jason Kidd's input matters a ton in this situation. And yeah, I think whatever direction he's looking to take this team or coach on the court, I think that has a big element of just the midseason direction. But there's also just an overall just direction for this team, regardless of this season, that matters a ton as well, where there's organizational alignment of having to, this sounds really stupid, but, or cliche, but it's just the element of there's organizational alignment on disalignment in a sense, where it's we have to figure this out on the fly still. The Anthony Davis direction depends very much on external factors, is why I say that. If you don't get great offers for him, I don't think you just trade him to trade him. So then that influences your basketball operations decisions significantly and how you approach this upcoming summer and the trade deadline. So I really think a lot of this is fluid and is predicated on just how the trade market looks for him. I don't think it's by any means we have to have this rigid basketball identity. We have to trade Anthony Davis to accomplish it, or not trade Anthony Davis to accomplish it. I think some of the few constants, though, is that Kyrie Irving is very valued in the short term. That's kind of my read of the situation. And for good reason. If you want to win now, there's a lot of teams that benefit from having a Kyrie Irving, where he's taking up a ton of attention. He's able to be one of those players that you can rely on to go make a ton of plays with the ball. He's unselfish. He's a cohesive fit with a lot of players with how he's developed his game throughout his whole NBA career. Yeah. So with that being said, that's also somebody who benefits a young player like Cooper Flagg. And for all the feedback elements we just mentioned about Jason Kidd, that's an element that matters a lot because Kidd has frequently praised the potential of having Kyrie, the value it brings for Cooper Flagg, where, Cooper's dealing with a lot of tough defensive assignments guarding him on a nightly basis right now, but you drop Kyrie Irving into the lineup, and then that becomes a lightning rod of defensive attention. Now, all of a sudden, maybe the top defender is gravitating towards taking Kyrie for most of games, which makes Cooper's job easier by default. All of the offensive actions they want to run by default become much more effective because Kyrie's gravity and his general threat with or without the ball is going to make everything more impactful. Coverages are much more difficult for the opposition, pretty much in any situation Kyrie's involved in, because switching is a nightmare when you have Kyrie on the floor. So overall, that's just some of those things that pull together right now where you're really trying to figure out the basketball operations thought process for this team. And I think you have to start by seeing how Kyrie Irving looks on the floor, how this team cohesively fits together and stays healthy. Because, for example, it's not just the Dallas Mavericks that deal with this stuff by any means. Like the Memphis Grizzlies, they've looked fantastic. 7 wins in the last 9 games. Zach Edey looked like someone who is a potential most improved player of the year type of growth right now. And then Ja Morant's about to come back all of a sudden. He's played 6 minutes with Zach Edey, and now Zach Edey's out for 4+ weeks while Ja Morant's about to come back. So 6 minutes total for the Memphis Grizzlies of Ja Morant and Zach Edey on the court together through potentially mid-January. Like that's really hard to make basketball decisions as a franchise. And that's the risk that also you run right now is that, unfortunately, as we mentioned, what if Anthony Davis were to be Zach Edey in this instance? What if he were to get injured and you don't actually get to see what Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Cooper Flagg gets to look like?
Are you thinking that, you mentioned it, that the Dallas Mavericks are not going to trade AD just to trade him? Because as much as I do believe that's the smart thing to do and to get the best return, I just have a feeling there's just still this black cloud around Klutch and AD, averse to the organization, averse to the fans, that I feel like there's an overwhelming chance, an over 50% chance. It's just a kind of a gut feeling that they are going to trade AD by the trade deadline. And I don't think they're going to get the best value. I think if you were to wait in the offseason, you will get a better value. But I think the Mavs are so risk scared right now to what has happened and him being out, and it's been injury after injury. And we just lost Derrick Lively for the season. We're going to get to him in just a second. Like, at some point you got to recoup assets and be like, and just take the loss for what it is and just cut it and not try to, we're going to have this high volume. Like, it could go absolutely terrible. He gets hurt and we can't trade him for anything really, and we got to sign him and whatever. Or we could get this great offer for him because he balls all season and takes us to the second round of the playoffs. Like, those are both options on the table. I'd rather take the one in the middle where it's like, I'm going to get a little less value because he hasn't played as many games as if he would have played the whole season. And but he stayed healthy, and I'm trading him while he's still healthy. That's just me. And I feel like the Mavericks are kind of thinking that way too. Do you think I'm wrong, or do you think they are going to be the, hey, unless we get the best value, unless we get the value that he is worth, that we think he's worth, we're not going to move him just to move him, even if Blake and the fans want him gone?
I think in a perfect world, you do have that middle ground where you do move him for good value or the best value. But I also think that's where it's a lot of those external factors where if you just don't even get serious trade offers within the next month or so.
Because teams know this too. Teams are aware that we don't want AD and he's injury prone. They're aware.
Yeah, they are definitely aware. And they also have their own like general agendas as well too. Like maybe they're not looking to make a big trade like December 31st or January 15th. Maybe that's more so we're just going to take any big move regardless towards the trade deadline in very early February, and whatever's out there is out there. But we're not really like super motivated, dead set on Anthony Davis just because of that extension implication that we talked about. Like, it's a lot of money to pay somebody at 37 years old. Like, it doesn't even matter who you are. Like, and rightfully so. Klutch Sports, Anthony Davis, they're going to want to pursue as long of a contract and as big of a contract as possible. So unless you want to be in a situation where you're negotiating that against the recent production, future injury risk, that's just kind of the reality that you're going to have to live with, and he could decline his player options almost $63 million. I believe it's 62.8, more so of an exact figure player option to reach free agency in the summer of 2027. So those are all those factors that impact your trade value as a star player that the Mavericks are going to have to really weigh as we get closer to the trade deadline.
Okay, I know you hate these trade offers, but I'm gonna read them anyways for the Mavs fans listening. You just tell me which one you like the best. We'll just go through them quickly. And this is on the ESPN report by Shams, Bobby Marks, Tim McMahon, all those guys. The Pistons get Anthony Davis. The Mavericks get expiring contract Tobias Harris, and they get 2 young players in Jaden Ivey and Ron Holland II. We'll say A is the best trade you've ever seen. F being I wouldn't even answer the phone. Where would you grade this trade?
No picks involved at all.
No picks involved in this one. No picks at all. You get Tobias in the expiring contract, so you get money for your salary, and then a young player in Jaden Ivey, who's also, I want to say, his contract will be due up in the offseason, and then Ron Holland II as well.
I probably put that one as like a D because I really like Jaden Ivey when he's healthy. I even interviewed him last year when he was really killing it. But all I've seen about Jaden Ivey is that he's like progressing, ramping up, and we haven't seen him on the court yet. So like that's really kind of a scary situation where you're dealing with someone you're moving like that's dealt with injuries in Anthony Davis for someone who's actively trying to get back from an injury. And Ron Holland's a good player too, but that's just like I don't think that's necessarily the type of young player that I'd be looking for if I was the GM. Tobias Harris is a good vet as well. He's really helped Detroit, like in terms of leadership and also on-court impact to get to where they are right now. That's a good player to have. But the Mavs have a lot of wings right now too. Like that, there's overlap with Cooper, with PJ Washington. You can get creative by just cramming players into different positions, like they did on opening night with no point guard. But
I would also give that a D-. I mean, we're getting no picks. I'm
if
getting
a star was in there, it'd be different, but he's not. So that makes it kind of rough.
I'm getting 2 players that haven't played that well for you, and I'm getting an expiring contract. I'm not really getting anything to really build it. Like I'm taking a bunch of chance, and obviously you are too, but you're also getting Anthony Davis. Like we're not trading, Najee Marshall. Okay, here's the next trade. This is a 3-team trade, so stay with me, people. The Raptors get Anthony Davis and Tony Bradley. Tony Bradley's from the Pacers. The Pacers get Daniel Gafford. So AD out the door, Gafford out the door. Mavs lose both of those players. The Mavs are going to get 6 assets back. RJ Barrett, Jacob Poeltl. I said Poeltl. Oh, my God. Isn't it Poeltl? Is it Poeltl?
Yeah, Jakob Poeltl, yeah.
Jakob Poeltl. I don't know why I said Jacob Poeltl. I couldn't have said That's my Caucasian side coming out. Jarris Walker, Ochai Agbaji. Did I say that right?
Ochai Agbaji, I believe.
That's why we have Grant here. 2026 first-round pick from the Raptors. 2027 first-round pick from the Pacers that is top 14 protected. So will not be a lottery pick. 2026 first, 2027 non-lottery pick. Ochai, Jarris, Yaka, and RJ Barrett. But you give up AD and Daniel Gafford. How do you grade this trade?
It's kind of tough, like just thinking out loud, because anytime you deal with the Raptors with a player making as much money as Anthony Davis, I think the default players are probably going to have to be RJ Barrett and Poeltl. I think Jarris Walker, he's an interesting young player. He hasn't really taken advantage of the season the Pacers have had where, like Tyrese Halliburton's out, expectations are low. There should be a developmental runway. Of course, there's not as long of a runway with Rick Carlisle as your head coach. Sometimes.
Do you remember on draft night? Me and you were both there when we're thinking it was the Derrick Lively draft night, so 3 years ago. That they might draft Jarris Walker. There was like a bunch of people in the room, a bunch of people online, like, "Hey, get Jarris Walker. It's gonna be a nice fit." And like when he got picked, I think like 2 picks in front of you. I was like, dang, I really wanted him. Like, this wing that can bang down low, that can kind of shoot, can defend. And then obviously in the short term, Derrick Lively was a way better fit. I mean, he went to the NBA Finals, he was your starting center, but just funny, Jarris Walker coming full circle. So you grade this A?
With Gafford involved too,
yep.
And you're only getting the Raptors first round pick this year, you're helping them get better by a good amount. Because Jakob Poeltl is dealing with injury right now, and yeah, he's looking like not he's looking a little rough in terms of the usual production he's going to provide you. And the 2027 pick for the Pacers is lottery protected. I feel like I'm putting that in a similar. I'll go with like C minus. Like I don't even like I almost want to say D again. Like I'm not expecting a massive trade haul, but it's like throwing Daniel Gafford in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not like because my problem with this is that Jarris Walker, regardless of what you think of him as a player, we're again getting that overlap where he's probably a 4, and I feel like, in my opinion, Cooper Flagg is a 4, and PJ Washington's probably a 4 as well. So like he can obviously play the 3s. Both of them can, like Cooper and PJ. So I'm not saying they can't, coexist by any means, but I'm just saying, like, in the perfect world, those are the positions those 3 guys are playing. I don't really feel like that's the young player I'm taking back in an Anthony Davis trade and hoping that pans out for me. So honestly, I actually like this one less than the last one if I'm thinking about this out loud, because the young player matters quite a bit to me, and the draft assets are underwhelming because I feel like
they seem good on paper, but you're getting the Raptors first, who have been good this year, and you're going to make them even better. And then so you're probably getting 2 picks that aren't in the lottery.
Yeah, like you're not getting a great trade, like probably draft compensation haul for this at all. And ideally, I'm not giving up a player of value to a third team. I would use Anthony Davis's trade value and salary to make a bigger trade where I'm like getting rid of bad contracts, like whether that's a Caleb Martin, whether that's a Jaden Hardy, or even like throwing in like a Dante Exum to where you don't have to eat the dead money by cutting him to make room for Ryan Nembhard. So I think that's probably one of the complicated factors of this as well too, where you're giving up an extra player of value to make this happen.
I think this is going to be your favorite one because it's my favorite one. This is him staying in the West. So the Eastern Conference teams ones were hot with the Raptors and the Hawks. Those were the ones that came up in the trade deadline. Also the Pistons. We'll get back to them in a second. This is probably my favorite one. Okay, the Warriors get Anthony Davis and Mason Plumlee. Might be saying, Blake, okay, how did the Hornets get involved? The Hornets get Maxi Kleba and Dalton Connect and catch considerations. Where did that come from, Blake? That came from the Lakers. The Lakers are getting Buddy Hield, he's on the Warriors. And then this means that the Mavericks get Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, and the 2026 first-round pick from the Warriors. I think this is my favorite one so far. I'm not saying I would do it tomorrow. I'm just saying I think out of the 3 that we've said so far, you're getting Draymond, Kuminga, and a 2026 first from the Warriors, and the only player you gave up was AD.
Yeah, I think in terms of like a safer route, you're getting an accomplished player in Draymond Green. You're also getting a young player that a lot of teams, I won't say a lot of teams, but there were numerous motivated trade suitors for Jonathan Kuminga. So like you don't even necessarily long-term have to keep either of them. You could probably do future trades as well. And you're getting an unprotected Warriors pick where like the Warriors,
they are getting AD in this scenario.
Yeah, they are for sure. So this is true. The Warriors are in the play-in. They get Anthony Davis. Like
the Warriors are 13-12 at the 8 seed right now.
Yeah, like you're probably not getting a great pick with that, but you're also probably not giving up or getting a really awful pick. Like you're probably getting a middle ground type of pick, like maybe late teens, something like that. Like just because the Warriors, I don't think they really care too much about the seeding, if you will. Like they're just trying to stay healthy and manage players intelligently. So yeah, you're probably getting a late teens pick in this scenario. It's tough because like Draymond is a obviously a talented player, really accomplished, but the problem I have with it is that you don't have Steph Curry playing with him. Like the way he's going to impact this team offensively is a big question in this hypothetical scenario. And that's also a lot of guys that are best probably playing the 4 once again. So it's like kind of that unfortunate like overlap element. Maybe you play Cooper at the 2, Kuminga at the 3, Draymond at the 4. I do like the possibility of being able to throw out small ball lineups with Draymond at the 5 at times, where Cooper and Kuminga can fly around. Like that's a fun scenario. But also for everything we talked about with Anthony Davis, Draymond is also somebody that's in his 30s and you would have to think about how long does this make sense to even really have him here. Unless you think you can just go for it with those two guys, which it's going to be tough to do that because of the record that the Mavericks started out with. They started 10 games below 500 after that Lakers loss not that long ago. So I don't know. I think honestly, we don't have a lot of great options here with the
Okay.
with,
I got
with
another
our
one
trades.
for you. What would you grade that one? What was the grade on that one?
I probably would go. I'll give it the best grade. I do think you're right that I like this the most. I'd probably go, just because of the circumstances of my options, I'd probably go with a B, just because of
I have B minus, B.
Yeah, in a vacuum, maybe different, but me being aware of my options, I've got to give it a B.
Okay, I got two more for you. I've got this one from the Western Conference, and we got the big 5-teamer that's been all over social media. Okay, this is the last regular one. The Spurs are involved. They get AD. That's kind of scary. They're giving the Spurs Anthony Davis. Just now saying that out loud, just wow. You're also giving up Najee Marshall. Najee Marshall goes to the Bulls. Now everything else is coming to you. You're going to get 6 assets. You're going to get Harrison Barnes. You're going to get Keldon Johnson. You're going to get Luke Cornett. You're going to get a 2026 second-round pick from the Jazz. You're going to get a 2028 and 2029 second-round pick from the Bulls. And you get to extinguish the 2030 first-round swap rights, which I'll let you explain that one.
Yeah, to facilitate, just to start off with that swap rights element, they used the Spurs as a third team to facilitate the Grant Williams sign and trade, and gave the Spurs a 2030 first-round swap to do that. So basically, you're not necessarily gaining anything except full control of your 2030 first-round pick back, which, I mean, that's valuable long-term, but yeah, I don't know if that's for Anthony Davis. It's not really exciting. You're also giving up a player of value again to a third team, and it looks like the assets. I'm personally not educated on who owns the Jazz 2026 second. I'm assuming the Spurs do, not the Bulls. I could be wrong, but so overall, you're sending Najee Marshall to Chicago to get 2 seconds, is what that looks like to me.
Yeah, can we take Najee out of this?
Yeah, I don't think that really. Yeah, I guess maybe for money purposes, but do I want Luke Cornett in return? I don't. I have to probably dig into the financial logistics of this and weigh it and see if it's still legal. But if I could just remove Cornett and Najee Marshall, and I don't care about getting 2 second-round picks for Najee Marshall, I would probably like this trade a little bit better, but it's inconsequential when we're talking about moving Anthony Davis. I don't like this one at all, honestly. I know the 2030 swap, cool, but Harrison Barnes is in the final stages of his career. Keldon Johnson's been good off the bench for the Spurs, but I'm not looking to trade.
You're also giving up Najee.
Yeah, you're giving up Najee as well, and they're relatively similar potential players in a sense. So I'm not looking to trade Anthony Davis for a guy that's producing off the Spurs bench as my long-term piece of this trade.
Yeah.
That's just.
I agree. I'm giving that one a D minus. I think all of them I wouldn't even pick up the phone for, other than the third one we read about Draymond and Kuminga. That one I would try to get around.
Yeah, out of respect for everything that Draymond has accomplished in his career, I think you had to pick up the phone. And Kuminga was someone who was drawing all the attention in the transaction cycle this summer too. So that's definitely the most interesting trade of all of them. I think you're right. I would probably, if the Spurs called me with that trade, I think I'd actually not pick up my phone. I think I'd probably change my number, if we're being real.
You got to block at that point. And I'm giving up Najee. Okay. This is the last one. It's the big one. I'm sure you guys have seen it on social media. The Hawks get AD, Kuminga, Buddy Hield, Devin Carter. The Pistons get Doug McDermott and cash considerations. Who cares? The Warriors get Kristaps Porzingis. The Kings get Trae Young and Luke Kennard. So a lot of big players move on the move. You got Porzingis on the move. You got Trae Young on the move. You got Anthony Davis and Kuminga on the move. And then here's the Mavericks return. The Mavericks, the only player they sent out was Anthony Davis. They get back Zach LaVine, who I believe has 2 years still left on his contract, a 2026 first-round pick from the Warriors that's top 14 protected, It says otherwise 2032 second round pick, 31 to 50. A lot of small details in there. And then the 2027 first round pick via the worst of the Bucks and Pelicans top 4 protected. So I'll let you break down those picks if those are even good picks. But you get Anthony Davis, or excuse me, you give up Anthony Davis, get back Zach LaVine, and get some draft capital. What do we think about this one?
Yeah, I genuinely hate this one. If we're being real about it, because
break it down.
So first, it's a non-Mavs note. I find this very entertaining because, like many months ago, I had actually reported that the Kings and the Hawks had like very preliminary, like not deep at all, trade conversations around Trae Young, and Scott Perry is not a fan of taking back Trae Young, but wants a point guard. So that's kind of a rich element for me personally in this entire trade construction, where that almost, to me, unless Scott Perry has changed his stance, which I don't really pay super close attention to the Sacramento Kings on that type of stuff. I don't know if that's changed, but that might be a deal breaker. But, with all that being said, we're focused on the Mavs situation. I just know that Sacramento would love to get rid of Zach LaVine's contract. And I don't think I want to be the team to take it, giving up a player that you're trying to move like Anthony Davis to help establish a direction of your franchise. Zach LaVine's a good player, but that contract is very big, and there's a lot of fine print on those first round picks. Like, I don't think I do that trade at all. Like, honestly, I might give that one an F.
That one's getting an F from our boy Grant Afseth. Okay. Let's transition out of the trade talk and talk about the Dallas Mavericks, who have been hooping the last 10 games. Four out of their last 5 got absolutely throttled by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Anthony Davis scored 2 points. So make a wish bucket. But they beat the Rockets, which I was at that game in person. They beat the who else did they beat? Beat the Nuggets.
Yeah, it was part of that road trip still. It was the Clippers
Miami
on the second night of a back-to-back, and then they went to Denver to end the road trip. They then, as you had mentioned, were able to beat Miami at home before that Thunder game. I think that was a back-to-back. They lost on the second night of a back-to-back against OKC, and then it was the Miami Heat. So, yeah, that's a pretty solid 4-1 stretch.
And over the last 10 games, your points per game leaders read as follows. Cooper Flagg's averaging 20 points over his last 10 games. Anthony Davis, 18.4. PJ at 18 flat. Najee Marshall at 14.6. Klay Thompson at 13.4. When Klay's played, other than like one, here and there, he's been pretty consistent the last month. And then Ryan Nembhard, the talk of the town, 13 points per game in his last 7. He's also averaging 6.9 assists. And if you look at probably just the last 4 games, it's probably closer to double digits. This guy has been producing. Me and you were both high on him in the preseason, but we just didn't know how much opportunity he would get as a two-way guy with D'Angelo Russell in front of him, Jaden Hardy in front of him, Brandon Williams in front of him. Obviously, Kyrie's on the bench, but in front of him. So you got 3 guys in front of you. You're a two-way guy who's 5'10". Even though we liked you, we just didn't know how much opportunity you get. And we know that Jason Kidd is not like D'Angelo Russell. I don't think you got to be a basketball savant to realize that. I think if you just watch any Mavs game, barely gets off the bench. When he does, it's so funny. D'Angelo will like either do absolutely nothing and validate Jason Kidd, or he'll go off for 20 and a quarter, and everyone's like, do we play him in the 4th? Like, okay, what do we do? Like, your point guards are also different. You got Brandon Williams, who's literally the Flash, the Lamborghini, can score 10 points in 5 minutes. You got Nembhard, who's just this high IQ, like true point guard, feeding other players, getting paint touches, spraying it out to the corner. Also with Nembhard, I think my favorite thing is when you're a 5'10" point guard who's passing the ball a lot, teams are going to leave you open. Teams are not even going to really respect you. They're going to leave you open whether you have the ball in your hand or not. Nembhard has been making them pay more times than not. I mean, I feel like most of the time I'm watching, it's like, okay, Nembhard hit the jumper. Nembhard hit a floater. Nembhard hit the catch and shoot 3. So Nembhard to me has been effective so that he's still respected on the court, because you don't want to be a guy that's like only passing and people don't even guard you. Caleb Martin. But yeah, what have you thought of these last, 5-10 games and kind of how the Mavs have somewhat turned it around?
Yeah, really, honestly, it's like almost a different season since that Lakers game when Anthony Davis came back, started at center, Ryan Nembhard started at point guard, and Cooper Flagg has had a lot of space to operate. That was a game when Cooper Flagg, I think he was the youngest player to record double-figure assists And then the following night
correct.
against the Clippers, I think he was the youngest player second youngest to have 30 behind LeBron, but the youngest to have 35 in a game on a back-to-back. So it was an interesting, really like kickstart of this like kind of style that we got to see. And just having that spacing has been a big difference maker for Cooper. It's really tough to operate in like very tight spaces against NBA defenses. It takes a big adjustment. And I think they were asking a lot of him at the start of the year. So that's really opened up his game. You talked about his production. He's been very productive. It's not a coincidence that that's the case. Much easier to get to the rim. He's still dealing with that thumb splint, and his 3-ball has been very like inefficient as a result. Maybe not all of that. Maybe still has to work on the mechanics. Not really sure there until we see a stretch with him not playing with the splint. But Anthony Davis at the 5, we've been talking about that a lot as well. He's just such a dynamic player at that position. All roads kind of lead through him, where he's the play finisher. The spacing's great. And then defensively, you're just as fast as you possibly can be 1 through 4 around him. And that's where his versatility really pops on that end as well. So I think, he didn't play against the Clippers on the road. They were able to beat them before the Chris Paul debacle really like kind of had that fallout. They go on the road against Denver, and they played very hard. The Nuggets, I really personally felt like they took their foot off the gas pedal after a phenomenal first quarter, and that was a wake-up game for the Nuggets. Like, they've responded with a 3-game winning streak since. Jamal Murray even had a 50-ball the game after in Indiana after they lost to Dallas, and they just were consistent for a full 48 minutes. That was something that they've struggled to do for much of the season, so that was probably the most impressive win of this stretch, because it was on the road in Denver, a place that in my short time, because some of these guys are covering teams for like 30 years, 20 years. In my short time, I feel like I almost never cover a win in Denver. So anytime that happens, very impressive to me personally, regardless of the players that are on the floor. And then coming back home, that Miami game, Tyler Hero was really hot early. I think he had 20 before halftime.
And he didn't score he did not score in the second half. He scored 0 points in the second half.
Completely like kind of zapped in terms of effectiveness. Norman Powell did not play in that one. So that was kind of the Heat have been in a weird spot where they've been like off and on having either Tyler Hero play since he returned against the Mavs in that road game where we last talked, or they've had Norman Powell in the lineup. It's been kind of like switching off. And then they've also had this weird situation where they play double bigs, either Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo are playing together, or they're bringing them off Khalil off the bench. So that was like, they're a team that's still trying to figure it out. I think the Mavs did a good job of guarding them in the half court much more effectively than that first game. That was an interesting test where Miami was getting a lot of like the think piece sort of like analysis from around the NBA of like their offensive principles, not really running pick and roll, kind of like what the Memphis Grizzlies were trying to do last year. And they were able to get by without Ja. They were getting a lot of praise, but now Norman Powell has talked about how he thinks teams are basically seeing them on film and they're going to have to adjust. And the Mavericks were one of those teams that managed to do that. So just carrying into that loss, Oklahoma City, they did a phenomenal job of, not only just sending doubles when it was appropriate against Anthony Davis, they did a great job of maintaining a shell without doubling. They just showed early help. They cross-matched Chet Holmgren off of Anthony Davis to let him roam and be a deterrent at the rim. And they showed help off the nail and also an early low man too. So they really struggled to create much off that. I thought it was too much like dump down, post up offense. There wasn't much like decoy action on the weak side to like open things up, but I thought they responded well against Houston. Obviously, a way different opponent, especially without Alperen Şengün. But on the second out of the back-to-back, I thought that was a major schedule loss risk for the Mavs, because any game Kevin Durant plays and all these other talented players on the Rockets play, that's a real potential problem for you. But they handled that game very well, very strong first half, and kind of put the game away pretty early. And that was another start-to-finish game that was really like solid to see from the Mavericks, regardless of who's on the floor. Like that's what you want to see. And just overall, the three themes that we talked about: AD at the 5, love it. Ryan Nembhard running point, a true point guard makes a huge difference. Cooper Flag continues to get better and is taking advantage of the spacing. And actually, I'll add a fourth one. The defense has been effective for the most part throughout this season, especially after like settling into some of these more traditional personnel combinations and maintaining quality defensive execution, even with a small guard like Ryan Nembhard. That has been impressive to see, but also leads us back to our original conversation of that's probably how you should have played out of the gate to get used to having a small guard on the floor, since you're going to have Kyrie back at some point. So it's regardless, though, it's been encouraging to see that defensive execution with him on the floor. But definitely unfortunate losing Derrick Lively, though.
Well, we'll see if they can continue it. They play the Nets at home tomorrow. Then you play the Jazz on the road on Monday, and then you got the Pistons at home on Thursday. We'll be joining you guys after that Jazz game, so to play the Nets and Jazz. They should take care of business in both of those. We'll see how AD looks. Derrick Lively out for the season with the foot surgery. We'll do another episode kind of detailing that and kind of what we've seen from the rotation and what we've seen from the centers. But it was so good seeing you again, Grant. It was good seeing you guys as well. Send a comment, share it with your friends. And be blessed. Until next time, toodles.